Hey beautiful, have you considered subscribing to our channel? Help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers.
Kalen Briggs adjusted the fusion wrench with a practiced twist, his fingers blackened by grease and plasma soot. The hiss of coolant lines and the low hum of a half-disassembled engine were the only sounds in Dock 6 of Outpost Trinion, a floating mechanics graveyard orbiting the desolate moon of Calfor through. The station's hull trembled occasionally, not from impact, but from the sheer age of its welds groaning against the vacuum. Callan worked through it like always, jaw clenched, mind fixed on bolts and bearings. 15 years had passed since he'd walked away from the war. Some days it felt like yesterday, others like it had never happened at all. He stood up, wiped his hands on a dirty rag, and squinted at the ship hull he'd been patching. It belonged to some trader from New Varda, missing half a stabilizer and running a Power Core 1 bad surge from becoming scrap. Still, it paid. He didn't ask questions, and they didn't offer answers. It was better that way. The sound of metallic claws clicking against metal echoed from behind him. Without turning, Callan said, "I told you not to sneak up on me, Vesh." A small, quadrupedal repair droid halted guiltily. Its single optic flashed orange. Not sneaking, walking, with dignity. Callan let out a dry laugh and leaned back against the ship's flank. "You got that part wrong." The droid approached and extended a tiny limb holding a datapad. "New arrival in Dock 7. Priority classification, null. Owner information, encrypted. Vessel registry, unknown. Surface scans suggest irregularities." He frowned and snatched the datapad. The ship had landed silently. No comms traffic, no ID ping. That alone was enough to make any station tech nervous. Callan looked at the diagnostic images. An unfamiliar profile shaped like a dagger head with hull plating that shimmered with refractive colors even under low-res scans. "Looks military," he muttered. "Looks old," Vesh replied. "Or advanced," Callan corrected. He stared at the vessel a moment longer, an uncomfortable itch crawling down the back of his neck. The past had a way of knocking when least convenient. He left Dock 6 behind and strode down the narrow walkway toward the main hangar. Dock 7 was quieter than the rest. The lighting overhead flickered intermittently, casting the new ship in harsh glints and dancing shadows. Callan stopped just before the force field boundary and took it in. It didn't belong here. The hull was white, not the sterile white of polished transport vessels, but a softer bone-like shade, almost translucent. Its wings folded inward like a bird of prey at rest, though he saw no clear engines, no weapon ports. Along the undercarriage were runes or carvings, too fluid to be language, too deliberate to be decoration. Something about it unsettled him. As he moved closer, he spotted a faint scorch mark near the port side and embedded in the hull just beneath it. A scale. It was no alloy. It glistened like pearl, refracting light with every step he took around it. Callan raised a hand toward it, fingertips barely grazing the edge. A flicker, a memory. Jungle heat, the buzz of alien insects, blood, smoke, and the sound of something breathing, massive, labored, fragile. He yanked his hand back like he'd touched a live wire. 15 years ago, on Cern Vale 9, his dropship had gone down during the last retreat of the Zarvex conflict. He'd been the only survivor in his crew, stumbling through the dense canopy until he found it, or it found him. It wasn't supposed to be intelligent. The files said they were animals, wild, hostile, kill on sight. But this one was different. It was enormous, its body twisted in pain, a wing shattered by shrapnel. Blood had pooled around its talons, gleaming like mercury. And it looked at him. Not with the wild panic of a beast, but with mournful understanding. Callan hadn't spoken. He didn't dare. But something in that stare had held him still. He should have run, should have called it in. Instead, he spent 6 days with it. Siphoning coolant to cool its fevered body, wrapping the wing in scavenged carbon fiber mesh, feeding it protein bars dissolved in water. It never made a sound, only watched him with those massive luminous eyes. Then, one night, it vanished. Callan had convinced himself it died and was dragged off by scavengers. He'd never told anyone. It was a secret act of treason, technically, helping what Command classified as a war species asset. He'd buried the memory, until now. The scale was the same color, the same iridescent shimmer. 1,000 ships had passed through Trinion over the years, but none like this. Authorization override accepted, chimed the hangar AI. Callan blinked. I didn't. The vessel's main hatch hissed open. A ramp extended slowly, silently. He reached instinctively for the plasma torch at his belt, not to attack, but for something to hold, something real. A moment passed. Nothing emerged. He stepped forward cautiously, crossing the threshold. Inside, the air smelled like static and ozone. The walls were smooth and pulsed faintly with bioluminescence, alive but artificial. No cockpit. No seats. Just a hollow space with embedded lights and strange indentations along the inner hull, almost like it was meant for something to curl inside. Then a whisper, faint, distant, not sound, but presence. You are remembered. He froze. Who's there? His voice echoed inside the ship, swallowed by silence. Time folds. But I do not forget. He stumbled back, out of the ship, and onto the hangar floor, breathing hard. Vesh scuttled toward him, whirring with concern. Biometric spike detected, the droid said. Your heart rate is elevated. Did something attack? No, Callan muttered, voice hoarse. Nothing attacked. He looked at the open ramp again. Something had spoken, or thought. Whatever it was, it knew him. And not just from records or surveillance. It remembered him. He didn't believe in destiny. He believed in circuits and combustion and the cold indifference of space. But this felt like the universe tapping him on the shoulder with a quiet, patient finger. Callan turned away and walked, back toward his quarters. He needed air, or sleep, or both. Yet as he lay on the cot in his dim, rust-stained room, the silence was loud. You gave me time. I return with it. The words echoed through his skull, unbidden, gentle. Outside, in the black void beyond the hangar, the stars shifted. Something was coming, and it wasn't human. Callan didn't know what role he would play in what followed, but the past had found him, and it had wings. A cold wind cut across the hangar bay as the station's atmosphere regulators adjusted to accommodate the sudden spike in dock activity. Callan felt the shift in air pressure before the alert sounded. Unscheduled vessel incoming, Vesh reported, from the gantry. Small-class freighter. Heat signatures consistent with weapons-grade hardware. No response to hails. Callan didn't need a name. Trouble never sent invitations. He dropped his tools, wiped his hands on his coveralls, and made his way to the upper deck. Through the grimy observation window, he saw the ship descend, a sleek, low-slung thing painted in matte black with crimson streaks, the kind of design that screamed privateer. Or worse. The freighter landed hard, repulsors blasting grit and dust across the hangar. The docking clamps latched with a metallic screech. A long moment passed before the hatch opened, and 5 figures strode down the ramp. They moved like wolves, heavy boots, clean gear, no wasted motion. Their leader, a tall man in a dark coat, lined with fiber armor, paused at the bottom, scanning the station with eyes like drilled steel. His head turned toward Callan's vantage point, and for a brief second, they locked eyes. Callan looked away first. He turned and descended back into the lower levels, hands instinctively brushing against tool belts and bulkhead switches, muscle memory from another life preparing for what he hoped wouldn't come. The crew of the black ship didn't introduce themselves. Instead, they marched into the commons and began interrogating dockhands and drifters, flashing plasma pistols, throwing out cryptic questions. Something came through here. Not human. Ship's white. Unmarked. You see it? Callan watched from the shadows as one of the bounty hunters backhanded a young mechanic across the face for hesitating. The boy went down hard, nose bleeding. The leader didn't even blink. "That ship doesn't belong to anyone here," Callan said as he stepped forward. All five turned toward him in unison. The leader smiled, a thin, polite thing that didn't reach his eyes. "And who might you be?" "Chief Mechanic," Callan replied. "Been here longer than the rust. I don't answer to threats." The leader strolled toward him, casual but coiled like a serpent. "We're looking for something specific. Something old, pale, wings wider than a freighter. Maybe came with a custom ship. You'd know if it landed." Callan's blood chilled. He kept his face neutral. "Haven't seen anything that fits," he said flatly. "We get plenty of strange ships out here, most of them not worth remembering." The man's eyes lingered on him, searching for tells. Callan held the stare. Finally, the man chuckled and stepped back. "We'll keep looking. Don't go far, grease monkey." They dispersed again, spreading through the station like a virus. Callan left quickly, ducking into maintenance corridors where only he and Vesh ever wandered. By the time he reached Dock 7, he knew the situation was spiraling. The white vessel hadn't moved since its arrival, still silent, still open. He stepped onto the ramp again, less afraid now, more desperate. "You said time folds," he murmured. "Well, it's unfolding fast." A ripple passed through the air like a tremor. The walls brightened, the ship humming faintly. Then a voice, not spoken, felt. "They track me. They hunt the last. They wear flesh and armor but smell of old blood." Callan swallowed. "What do they want?" "Power. Legacy. My kind's extinction was not enough. One spark remains, and you lit it." He felt the memory surge again, heat and blood and silver scales slick with pain. That creature in the jungle. Whisper. He hadn't thought of it as male or female, predator or prey, just wounded, dying, and silent. Now the voice was older, deeper, layered with echoes of time and space. "I didn't do it for this," Callan said. "I just couldn't let it die." And yet, here you stand. The light within the ship coalesced, forming an outline, hazy at first, then clarifying. Massive claws touched the hangar floor as the form stepped forward. A dragon, pale as moonlight, its wings curled protectively along its sides. Its scales shimmered with hues unseen in the visible spectrum. Eyes like collapsed stars focused on him. "Whisper," Callan breathed. The creature inclined its head slowly. There were no ceremonial reunions, no cries of joy, just recognition and readiness. Outside, alarms wailed. The bounty hunters had found something they didn't like. Callan turned, sprinted toward the gantry, and looked through the viewport. One of the mercenaries was screaming into a comm. Another pointed at the security feed, Dock 7 highlighted in red. "They're coming," Callan muttered. Whisper stepped fully into the open bay, wings unfurling. The bounty crew was all ready, charging across the loading bay. They had rifles and shoulder-mounted cannons, tech designed to puncture hulls and vaporize armor. Whisper didn't flinch. The first shot lanced through the air. Whisper moved, not dodging but absorbing. The beam struck a translucent scale and scattered into harmless sparks. Callan barely registered it before the dragon retaliated. It opened its jaws and light, pure, white, searing light, poured out. It wasn't fire. It wasn't plasma. It was something older, more primal. The Bounty Crew's lead ship detonated in the hangar with a deafening roar, engulfed in waves of heat and force. Two of the mercenaries screamed and scattered. The others opened fire, but their weapons might as well have been stones. Whisper advanced slowly, wings shielding Callan from the worst of the crossfire. The leader of the Bounty Crew activated a jump pack and launched himself into the air, firing down with a magnetic repeater. Callan ducked as shrapnel whistled overhead. Whisper moved with terrifying precision. A tail flick snapped the man mid-flight, sending him crashing into a cargo container. The last mercenary ran. Whisper didn't follow. The hangar fell silent again, except for the hiss of burning metal and the low rumble of the white dragon's breath. Callan stood amidst the wreckage, panting, ears ringing. "Why now?" he asked. "Why come back after all this time? The wound you healed was not only of the body. My kind were betrayed, burned from the skies by those we once guided. I was young. I didn't understand mercy, not until you gave it." Whisper stepped closer. His eyes glowed with more than light. They held memory, sorrow, and something approaching reverence. But mercy leaves a mark, and they followed it here. Callan shook his head. "You brought a war to this station." "No, they brought it chasing me. I came to warn you, and to offer you the sky again." The ship behind them powered up without touch. Its systems pulsed, alive and aware. Whisper's tail brushed against the hull, and the surface shimmered like water. Callan looked down at his grease-stained hands. He was a mechanic, a man who patched up second-rate cargo ships and cursed at malfunctioning coolant valves. Not a warrior anymore. But he hadn't run. Not now. Not back then. Whisper's voice returned softer. "They are not done. The scouts were only teeth. The mouth is still coming." Callan exhaled slowly. "Then we better find our fangs." The dragon's eyes narrowed slightly, something between a grin and a growl. Outside, debris floated in zero-grav pockets, flickering in the artificial light. The station creaked, systems recalibrated, and far beyond its hull, new sensor pings echoed in the black. Callan looked up into the sky he thought he'd left behind. Something was out there, something big, and it hadn't forgotten either. The cold edge of space loomed beyond the hangar's magnetic shield as Callan stood inside the strange vessel once more, the hull vibrating beneath his boots with a living pulse. Whisper crouched nearby, his vast form coiled like a predator in the stillness. Wings tucked, eyes closed as though meditating. But Callan could feel it. Tense energy beneath the dragon's stillness. A coiling readiness. He adjusted the interface panel on the ship's interior wall, where symbols restructured, themselves in response to his thoughts. He still didn't understand how it worked, but the ship had accepted him. It obeyed him, or at least it listened. "We've got 3 hours at most before more show up," he muttered, checking the external sensor array. That distress burst the bounty hunters triggered. It echoed across 4 jump lanes. They weren't just thugs. "Somebody high up wants you dead, Whisper." The dragon opened one eye. "They want extinction, not justice. I am not the last, but I am the only free one." Callan turned. "Free? Most of my kind lie in cryo-holds deep, beneath military vaults, harvested, catalogued, pieces of what we once were." The words cut deeper than he expected. "And they tracked your jump signature?" "Not mine. Yours." Callan stiffened. "What?" "Your breath still carries the echo of our link. You touched my blood, my pain. Time does not erase such things. The scent of mercy is rare in this galaxy. It shines like fire. They hunted me by chasing your light." He staggered backward, stunned. All this time. He thought he'd buried the memory, thought he'd moved on. But his one act of compassion had become a beacon, a thread they'd followed, across the stars. Outside, station lights dimmed briefly, power diverting. The station's AI sent a soft pulse of warning through his wristband. Unscheduled warp signature detected. Vesh's voice crackled through a nearby speaker. Incoming. Heavy mass. War-class cruiser. No identification beacon. Callan's. Breath caught. A war-class cruiser meant orbital bombardment capability. In atmosphere, it could level a city in minutes. Here, it could crack the outpost apart with a single salvo. We're not equipped to fight that, he said. Whisper rose slowly, his wings brushing against the ceiling as he unfurled to full height. We are not fighting a ship. We are ending a pursuit. If I run again, they will chase forever. If I turn now, they will burn others to reach me. You. Callan didn't respond right away. His fingers clenched against the console as he stared at the scanner screen. The cruiser dropped out of warp with a ripple of distortion, its black hull blotting out stars. It didn't fire immediately. It didn't need to. They were being watched. You're planning to face it, Callan said quietly. No. We are. He turned, uncertain. I don't even know how this ship flies. It flies like instinct. Let me guide. You be the anchor. Anchor? You are not the weapon. You are the choice. Something inside Callan unlocked at that moment. All the years of avoidance, of burying the past in engines and hydraulics, it couldn't erase who he had once been. He wasn't just a mechanic. He was a soldier who had chosen mercy in a world that demanded ruthlessness. He was a man who had defied orders not with weapons, but with care. He stepped into the central cradle, an alcove in the ship's inner chamber, ringed with softly glowing nodes. As he did, light flared across the walls, syncing with his heartbeat. Whisper moved into the flight core beside him, the ship expanding subtly to accommodate both their forms. Then, without thrusters, without fire, the vessel lifted. Outpost Trinion fell away behind them as the white dragon ship cut a silent arc into the stars, heading straight toward the waiting cruiser. On the bridge of the warship, Admiral Drainrell observed the anomaly's approach with narrowed eyes. Engagement range. In 3 clicks, lock forward batteries. His second-in-command, a thin, pale man with cybernetic implants in place of a jaw, nodded silently and relayed the order. Are you sure that's the creature? The gunner asked. It looks different. Rel didn't glance back. That ship is alive. The beast is merged with it. It's the last free specimen. Our scans confirm the Callan Briggs signature. He's the key. Orders? Capture is no longer a priority. The forward cannons began to glow. Inside the living ship, Callan felt a sudden wave of pressure. They intend to vaporize us. Then we hit first. The ship surged forward, shifting dimensions mid-flight. One moment they were kilometers apart. The next, they were inside the cruiser's sensor shadow. Too close for standard weapons to track. Whisper's breath ignited, streaks of pale energy firing in elegant arcs. They didn't destroy, they disabled. Conduits blew, engines failed. Shields flickered and collapsed. Callan's fingers moved with the ship's rhythm, guiding pulses of magnetic disruption toward the cruiser's belly, but the warship retaliated. A secondary turret fired blind. One blast caught the dragon ship's starboard wing, sending them spiraling. Callan gritted his teeth, gripping the interface. Whisper, stay with me. Pain is passing. Focus, focus. He corrected the trajectory, righted the spin, and dove below the cruiser's hull. From that angle he saw it, an open port vent near the hangar bay. A weakness. Can you fire through it? Yes, but it is not enough. Whisper's voice grew colder. There is a command pod near the ship's core. Destroy that and their pursuit ends. We'll never reach it before they recover. We do not need to reach it. We need to be in it. Callan hesitated. Wait, you're not suggesting... They took my kind, split us apart to study. I would rather burn with dignity than live as an echo. The meaning behind those words sank like iron into Callan's gut. A suicidal charge. No, he whispered. There has to be another way. Then find it. But if not, be ready. The ship flared its engines. They cut toward the hangar vent, skimming the cruiser's outer hull with mere meters of clearance. Inside the warship, alarms screamed. Gun turrets tried to turn, but Whisper was too fast. The Dragon roared, not with sound, but with light. The vent collapsed inward. The ship dove in. The next moments were chaos. G-forces bent Callan against the seat as the walls of the warship's interior flashed by in blurs of red and steel. Whisper slammed into bulkheads, tearing through barriers with talons of light. Explosions rang behind them. Troopers fired desperately, their weapons bouncing off the living hull like raindrops. Then the command core loomed, a sphere of hardened alloy surrounded by rotating energy shields. "This is it," Callan said. "We take it now." Together, he reached out, physically and mentally, and felt Whisper reach back. Time slowed, light bent, and with a final breath, they struck. The core detonated with the force of a newborn sun. The cruiser ruptured from the inside out, panels splitting, fire blooming across its spine. Emergency jumps fired across the fleet's perimeter, scattering survivors into the void. In the aftermath, all that remained was silence, and a single white ship floating above the ruins of its pursuer. Inside, Callan slumped to his knees, heart pounding, breath shallow. "Whisper!" The dragon stirred, slow and weary, but whole. "We are not dead." Callan laughed, ragged and disbelieving. "Good. I'm not done being angry at you yet." The stars outside were quiet, for now, but deep. In the dark, they both knew. The war wasn't over. It had only just begun. The stars had never looked so sharp, so near. Callan floated in the cockpit's low-gravity chamber, silent and awake, watching Whisper drift beside the debris of the shattered warship. The wreckage glinted in scattered arcs, torn hulls, sparking. Engines and blackened alloy plates all tumbling in frozen silence. Whisper hadn't spoken in hours. The damage to his wings had begun to heal, the scales re-knitting, the luminous veins pulsing with that strange inner light. But the dragon's presence had dimmed, like a beacon flickering under heavy wind. The ship was intact, but something deeper was fractured. Callan exhaled slowly, fingers brushing the neural interface along his wrist. It had begun to imprint with the dragon's energy, subtly altering the skin beneath. A side effect, or maybe something more. Whisper had warned him. Bonding wasn't just temporary. It reshaped both of them. "I know you're awake," Callan said quietly. "You've never been good at pretending." Whisper stirred. "I am calculating futures." Sounds exhausting. It is. The silence returned, heavy. Then Callan broke it again. "You knew the warship wouldn't be the last." "Yes. You didn't tell me about the signal pulse it sent before we destroyed it." Whisper opened one eye, the pupil narrowing into a slit. "It changed nothing. They would have come anyway. The difference now is that they come prepared. And we're not." The dragon's wings unfolded slightly, just enough to brush the air with a ripple of gravity. "We are not unprepared, but we are still alone." "No," Callan said. "We're two. That's enough for now." Far beyond the wreckage field, sensors picked up the first anomalies. Curving spatial distortions, gravitational wells opening like maws. A fleet, 5 ships, maybe more. Not bounty hunters, not scavengers. Military. Callan felt a shudder run through the ship as Whisper bristled. "Those hulls. I know them." "Who?" "The Scourge Armada. They razed the cradle worlds of my kind, took our eggs, burned our skies." Callan's jaw tightened. He scanned the specs, each ship more monstrous than the last. They weren't just war-ready, they were extinction vessels. "This isn't a hunt," he muttered. "It's an execution." Whisper turned fully to face him. "Then we do not run." Callan felt something settle inside him, something that had waited for this moment, buried under years of rust and regret. He walked to the command cradle, stepping into it as naturally as drawing breath. What's the plan? We divide them. This ship is fast, smarter, but it cannot face all of them. You must think like prey, but strike like predator. Decoy and kill. Yes, but we must also reveal. Callan looked at him. Reveal what? You. The chamber darkened, as Whisper surged energy through the hull. Outside, the ship's form shifted, no longer just a vessel, but a shape of living intent. It became a spear of light and scale, flowing through debris fields like water, the dragon's wings threading against solar winds. The first enemy vessel fired, plasma beams lancing through space like furious lightning. Whisper spun, flared, his tail, and bent the shots across his shimmering hull. They curved, refracted, exploded against friendly ships behind them. Two vessels fell into disarray immediately, their formation broken. Callan dove them into the opening, Whisper's body, contorting mid-flight to corkscrew through a gap no machine alone could have calculated. They slipped beneath the flagship's shield barrier and let loose a pulse of gravity-inverted force, an ancient technique, one of the last his kind had wielded in the dying days of their empire. The flagship's hull buckled, not destroyed, but bruised, crippled. Then came the retaliation. 4 vessels locked on simultaneously. They adapted fast, faster than Whisper expected. Their tech wasn't just military, it was derived, dragon-coded, stolen knowledge twisted into a weapon. Callan pushed harder, synchronizing his mind with Whisper's. We need to break their link. They're sharing targeting data. Then sever the throat. They dove. Through plasma storms, through kinetic shrapnel fields, through walls of anti-phase fire, they tore toward the control cruiser at the center of the net. It was older, darker, and from it came the signal that bound the others. Callan screamed as the ship burned around them. Light cut across the cockpit. The shields wavered, barely holding. The dragon howled in pain but didn't veer. His claws dug into the void itself. Then Callan saw it. Deep in the control vessel's belly, a pulse node. A stolen piece of Whisper's people. A dragon heart fragment, pulsing with captured blood. That's how they track you, Callan realized. They built a signal out of your kind's dying breath, then let us return it. They launched everything. Not just fire, not just force. They launched memory, pain, rage, grief, and something older. The raw echo of freedom. Whisper's roar filled space, a soundless sound, vibrating in the bones of the enemy fleet. The heart shattered. The cruiser imploded. The signal broke. The other ships faltered, directionless, confused, their formation unraveling like scattered insects. Callan dropped to one knee, panting. Blood leaked from his nose. The link was burning him alive from the inside. Whisper, he gasped. The dragon turned slowly toward him. The light in his eyes dimmed. You are more than I hoped. But the final act is mine. What are you talking about? They will rebuild. Others will come. Unless I become a myth again. A ghost. I must vanish. But you must stay. No, Callan said. You said we were together. And we were. But your fire is not mine. Yours must survive. Mine must disappear. The IB ship began to fragment, its form unraveling into stardust. Whisper stepped from the fading hull, massive wings rising once more. Don't do this, Callan shouted. The dragon lowered his head. You made me live. Now I give you sky. Remember me, not as a weapon, but as a whisper in the dark. And then, with one final pulse of impossible light, Whisper launched upward, into the heart of the remaining. Fleet, shifting, blinding, burning. The sky lit with the explosion of stars. And then, silence. Callan floated in the emptiness, surrounded by wreckage and cooling metal. The ship was gone. Whisper was gone. Only the stars remained, and a single trail of pale light winding through the void. He drifted for what felt like hours until rescue came. He didn't speak when they found him. He didn't explain. He couldn't. But he remembered. He would always remember. The mechanic who saved a dying dragon. The dragon who became his friend. The war that ended in sacrifice. And the whisper that still echoed in his soul. Not all heroes roar. Some leave only silence.